Hello, fellow Toolboxers. Welcome to episode number 359 of the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox podcast. Now, a lot of times I say the number of the episode wrong. So my wonderful assistant, Kayla, then reminds me that we're actually one episode off, but we fixed them up. Today, we're having a good interview, a talk with my good friend and great immigration lawyer, Mireles, just talking shop, and we're going to have a private just chat together. I'm like, let's just press record and record some of it and just talk. I thought that'd be cool for other people to listen to because I know a lot of y'all are small firm solos and you don't really have someone to just talk about this stuff. And, ideally, when I made this program up, I don't know, years ago, it was to have like the conversations that we have at Christmas parties or on one-on-one. But because of confidentiality, all that issues, you can't fully get there. I think we get like 60, 70% there. But the real fun conversations are live one-on-one. And that's why I really cherish when we see each other at the conferences, the annual conference, and hopefully, God willing, I'll be able to go to all the chapter conferences and meet you all one by one. And so that'd be great. But anyways, I'm going on a tangent here. Speaking of being able to openly talk, I have a series I've started where I talk about case studies of different cases I did, particular E2 visas, which a lot of people want to know about. I wish I had this service when I started because the mentors I had for E2 are all terrible. They hear this, and then they really put me the wrong direction. But I'm doing this live session. It's not recorded, so we could talk more openly. And I just go over a case study of a case today with huge redactions. But nonetheless, you see how it is, so you're more comfortable with it. Because if you've never done an E2 before, you might know 99.9% of it. You're there. But with immigration law, every time you do a new case, it's just you need someone to push you over to see if you're going the right direction. So that's what the goal of this one is. We did one in November, I think it was, a couple weeks ago, and it was a hit. So we set up another one January 16th, a Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And I think out of the 8 seats there, I think it was only 3 seats left. So email me if you wanted to get into on that. It's $250 for an hour. It's no recording, but it's probably going to fill up like as soon as this recording actually comes out. It's probably going to fill up. But what you could do is email me, and I created some sort of like wait list. So the next one comes out. So I'll just keep waitlisting people, and then once they get a certain number, I'll reach out and go, okay, let's close it. But there's so much demand. I don't talk about it as much. When I talk about it, we get so much demand that this is probably going to be a thing that I'm going to do like twice a month probably. And then kind of get marriage green card cases and all that kind of stuff in there too, and L's and all that. L's going to be really big. I'm getting back to doing L's. I'm not sure if it's the right time to do with Trump coming, but it's a lot of demand for it, and I have a team now, so it may be able to help me a lot do it. Definitely EB1As, NIWs, that kind of stuff people are going to really enjoy. So we're going to get into that. If you're interested, just email me so you're on my newsletter, so when they pop out, you'll hear about it. Having said that, we have a detailed marriage green card course, which is like the number one passion, 18 plus hours of training, plus office hours and one-on-ones, and it'll get you going. My practice is based on this, and I've been living a good life for years just doing marriage cases. So I really recommend it. Put the investment into it to take yourself to the next level. Having said all that, the following information is not intended as individual legal guidance. Please consult an attorney about your case, but you all know that already. I hope you enjoy it.
How you been? What's the
Good.
latest?
Good. Latest. I mean, well, there's a lot going on. I've been able to show up to work consistently. That always creates it where if you have win after win after win, it starts to like pile up and you start getting exponential gains. So I've been seeing that for like, I'm consistently doing marketing. It's working out, consistently fixing the systems, and it just piles up and goes. And then add the Trump boom to it, which unfortunately is going to be a craziness next year. But at the same time, a lot of people who didn't usually, like I had a consult with a guy who was like, normally I wouldn't do a consultation. I fought for naturalization myself, but I'm going to talk. So I went over the case. I realized the guy adjusted status incorrectly. So if he natses, they're going to kick him
Wow.
out. And he got really angry at me. I told him he thought I was trying to like lie to him, but I kept explaining. I sent him the rules. I said, go get a second opinion. But I was able to like save his life essentially right there, because that would have been, the denaturalization task force looking for those exact kind of cases because it was incorrectly adjusted. May have gone through, frankly, if a Nats too, but it's a ticking time bomb with how it goes. But it's just potential cases increase.
Well, and that's the interesting phenomenon is this shock of a what if is getting people like you said who normally probably would have tried it on their own because if it doesn't work out, I'm out some time and money, but at least I learned now because the rhetoric is so extreme. Now it's people are like you're saying very sensitive. So there's this population who like you were just referring to that wouldn't have consulted, but they did. And look, this is actually the benefit without sounding like salesmen.
Yeah.
It's like you can all fix your own car, and I use the mechanic analogy all the time. You can work on your car. Oh, I don't want to take it to a mechanic. They're going to take my money. They're going to find out problems that aren't there. Blah blah blah. unless they find a big problem that could save your car. In our case, we could save your life. So
Yeah.
that must have been humbling for you to be able to kind of issue spot that. Oh yeah, you know what? Technically, you shouldn't have never gotten your green card.
Yeah. And there's two levels to it too that I open on. One is like because he got angry at me, I started getting mad, but then I was like, you know what, I have to be thankful if I had the opportunity, the knowledge to help him. He doesn't understand it now, but he's killing the messenger right now. But once he calms down, relaxes, realizes I made a big help for him. So it really validates like the work I'm doing in that sense. And then the other sense is like when it comes to marketing and sales, it's sometimes immigration lawyers, you know, like it's a tactic to scare the hell out of people to get them to hire you, and I hate doing that. It's not something I like to do, but like, you know, I'm glad this guy on his own was afraid because of Trump that caused him to do this to save his life. Maybe it is better to be somewhat adding fear because it is justified at this point, that because immigration is such a mess and problems do happen. I don't know. I don't want to be a sales technician using that as a tactic of fear, but having some fear because of the reality of what we see every day is necessary. And so, how do you the pros and cons of that? Not being just hustling people for money, but actually just putting realistic fear in their hearts of knowing that they should have at least a consult or something.
Well, and to your point about the model, I saw when we were coming in, you know, in 2012, 2013, that the old school model was fear. People would talk to me and they'd say, "You're the fourth, fifth, sixth attorney I've talked to, and you're the first one that didn't make me afraid."
Yeah,
And I think that used to be the business model from a marketing standpoint. That it's kind of like you know, if you walk in to go look at a car, their business model is don't let you leave without, you know,
yeah,
buying something. So we're going to say whatever it is to make sure you don't leave because that's how we make our money. And I think the old timers, cats that have been doing 10, 15 years longer than us at that time, that was just what they did. So I would routinely ask people, "Oh, were the attorneys you were consulting with older?" And you know, to a man, yes. And it's like, yeah, you know, rightly, wrongly, that was the model. That's what worked. I grew up in the internet, and I'm practicing in the age of the internet, which is you can get 10 consults for nothing or little and get 10 ideas. And so now it's no longer about if you come talk to me, I'm going to scare you so you don't sign you so you don't talk to the next person. Now it's I know you're going to talk to everybody else. So the value added that I can bring is my quality of service, the ability of you know better communication, making you feel a certain way.
yeah,
Because as you know, people forget what you do for them; they never forget how you make them feel, and that is as gimmicky as it sounds. Like you said, we walk this fine line. It's cliche because it's true. We are in the business of helping people in such an intimate way, and our predecessors and colleagues, and some would say competitors, know that, and then they kind of, you know, they want to screw, you know, kind of
yeah,
screw the get those emotions going. So then it's kind of like, good, you're going to pay whatever I say
yeah.
because now you're scared.
And that jump. And I do like people getting second opinions and be able to compare lawyers because it makes you stand out better. I have several clients right now who've had other immigration lawyers, and they know the difference of the speed of response, the quality, the care, and all that kind of stuff. When people never had a lawyer or like their friend refers them, and this is why my one of my issues with referrals is when they refer them to me, they just contact me. They don't go through the hassle of like weeding out people. They just come at it, and they don't appreciate like the different level of service coming at him, the public presentation we have, how much education material we put out there, all that kind of stuff. And so there's like, if they don't have the experience immigration lawyers or someone to compare to, they just take for granted sometimes. So it's an interesting situation. There's still, you know, there's a lot of bad advice I see online still, and like a couple people come to me and they tell me what the other lawyers have said. I'm like, oh my god, this is like the opposite of what you should do. They get you in trouble. That's always troubling because a lot of times we always tell people hire a lawyer, don't hire paralegal or notary or something like that. But it's you never know what you're going to get, and it's you know, if we go to doctors, we think, oh, I went to a surgeon. We go to the first surgeon that says you need the surgery, you think you're good. They're just like us too. They're going to be ones that haven't kept up on the new updates and the new surgery and procedures and stuff like that. It's really important to get 4 or 5 opinions. It just requires a lot of patience to do that.
Well, and I think what we're seeing, and realistically, this is why we've been building our practice for all these years, so that when you get to a point when there's a lot of traffic, you have a notoriety online. There's a level of in this review economy we now live in and operate in. There's a level of okay, here's 5 people, and of these 5, there's enough reviews where I feel like they're legitimate.
Yeah.
Okay, of these 5, let me just send out a little tickler and let me see a response. And of the 5 that I've tickled, 2 of them got back to me right away. Okay, of these 2, one has time for me tomorrow. Okay, great. And so there is something to be said about, accessibility and quality of
Yeah.
service. And the way I think about it and talk to potential clients pretty much every day is my hope is that I can have a conversation with somebody about a situation and help them. It'd be great for you to hire me. It'd be great to monetize every conversation I have, but that's not my business model. My business model is let's talk. If I can help you, great. This is what I can do. And if I never hear from you again, no problem, no harm, no foul. I'm busy enough. On the flip side, this kind of essentially slow sell, because that's how I like to be sold, which is this is the menu of options, take it or leave it. We're here if you have any questions.
Yeah.
And when I walk away with no, oh, hey, what if I discount you? Or, oh, hey, what if I blah, blah, blah? I feel like, oh, okay, they're not desperate. Because I think the consumer, we are now so aware of desperation in a way where it's a big red flag. Where if you talk, like you said, to a doctor, a florist, a dry cleaner, if they say, oh, it's going to be a week, and you're like, oh, okay, it's fine. I need it by 3 days. And they say, okay, we can get it done. That doesn't make you feel better. If anything, you're like, oh, why did you say it a week? And now that relationship starts off in kind of a weird foot. Whereas if they say a week, but they were honest about it, and then the next time I have dry clean and I come back to them, it's like, oh, yeah, like there's a level of, I think you're the same way. We think about things in a long term approach, which is, I think, very different than a lot of our colleagues and maybe this the legal market, which is you called me again. I have to turn this into money today, and
Yeah.
I'll say whatever I need to say to make money.
When you do that, there's a lot of lawyers that will complain about their clients or how difficult they are and how they do it. It's like you kind of bring it on by attracting that kind of
Yep.
clientele. So almost to a T, very rarely do I have clients that I wouldn't want to invite to dinner and like be able to spend a day with them, have no problem. It's pretty random. Like the people actually hire us, not the leads per se, but the people who actually hire us. Almost all of them are just like long-term relationships, and it's really how you view your business, how you view your life, how our relationship, for example, we know for each other years and the communication we had. It really just that piece of your life and your work is not separate from the rest of your life. Yeah, you bring your own personality and how you like your life to be. You bring it in that section as well, and everything kind of evens out, and it comes to what you want. Now, you gotta. Some people like having chaotic lives and help mess with family and friends. And that's not me. But if that's your thing, you kind of see that in your practice probably as well.
Well, and you bring up a great point because I think it's kind of like exercising to lose weight versus exercising as a lifestyle, right? People that it's like, oh, I need to lose 15 pounds. So I'm going to do this really hardcore regimen. I'm not going to eat. I'm going to fast. I'm going to work out twice a day. And I'm going to kind of have this boom or bust kind
Yeah,
of lifestyle mentality. Whereas someone like you or me, which is no, 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 I exercise as a way of life. Sure, who doesn't want to lose weight if you put on some, let's say, holiday pounds or what have you, or you're stressed, you're not eating, you lose weight, what have you. But there's a level of, well, exercise is good for my mental, emotional, physical well being. So I do it as a way of life. In the same way, I think our practice is in this idea of high fees, high service, and high quality. It's one of these where, oh, I don't need to sell 100 cars this month because I'm not a massive $1 billion corporation. I literally have a small lot. I'm trying to find good vehicles for good people because I do want, to your point, create a relationship. So when your family needs something in the future, I'm someone that you did business with in the past. Everything I said that was going to happen or could happen did. And when it was all said and done, you made me feel better, not worse. So then when somebody else needs a car, let's say,
yeah,
I know who I'm going to call to. And I think that long-term investment or that kind of tortoise versus the hare approach, to your point about colleagues, it's because you and I don't have 25 people on payroll. We don't have a lease to a commercial building that we can't afford, but it looks nice. We're not driving brand new cars every year and have expensive lifestyles because we know that comes at a price.
yeah,
And that price is squeezing every person you talk to, as opposed to living within our means, really investing in these relationships so that you do create a relationship with a client. And as again, this is kind of gimmicky
yeah,
sounding, but it really is, as you and I have seen, the colleagues we've had that are doing this 20, 30, 40 years, when they approach it the way we're talking about, they're able to have a pretty meaningful life where, yes, they have this career and this part of their identity, but they also have personal lives and families and their kids talk to them and they're still
yeah.
married to their first partner, right? And I think that's what's the difference.
Having to say yes to a case or getting a client because you need the money as opposed to you want the case. It's the difference between happy life and unhappy life. I had one lawyer tell me is uh, the beginning of the month where you okay, I'm starting out fresh and stuff. You get good clients, and the end of the month we got to make numbers. You say yes to clients you don't want. That's where the troublesome clients won't come, and you got to kind of. And as expensive as it is nowadays in LA, especially with how expensive things are, it's like your margins are gonna get squeezed. You got to increase prices a lot, but just do whatever you can and not say yes as for the money to be the priority. It's like, oh, I like being an immigration lawyer. I like doing this case. Okay, then how much it is, or I like these people, but the goal is not to have to do something just purely for the money or as a primary reason, because that's where the nightmares come out.
Well, and it's again, it's a holistic lawyering, right? It's this idea that, oh, if I just say yes to everything because payroll's coming in 3 days and I need, X to come in to the, to the bank account, like you said, you're going to take on cases you otherwise wouldn't, problematic cases, potentially cases with no actual option, but you're going to do the FOIA and you're going to do your due diligence. Yes, you're not doing anything, that's essentially unethical, but a case you'd say, you know what, here's 5 other offices, they can do the FOIAs for you. They can kind of give you a full case review. Unfortunately, I don't have capacity to do it. And oftentimes, and I'm sure you've seen this, the people you say no to and give them a reason, oftentimes they come back to you with referrals and
Yeah.
family and colleagues and friends said, hey, I know we didn't end up working together, but the way you made me feel and the way you treated me when I didn't have any options, because I talked to many attorneys that said the same thing, you weren't selling me, you were actually trying to help
Mhm.
me. This is why I'm bringing you my colleague from work. This is why my mom who had some questions. And so it's an interesting approach to a small business essentially, which is because the work is so emotional, we can really be as chaotic, like you said, or as non chaotic as we want. And I think it's a testament that your colleagues who are seemingly calm, still have their hair, still in a good mood most of the time,
Yeah.
it's probably because they know how to issue spot a case that's like, yeah, this is going to be a crisis from the moment we start to the moment we end. And unfortunately, when I was starting out, maybe I'd say yes and I'd learn the hard way, but now
Hmm.
it's not worth it. And I think as a consumer, we'd appreciate hearing that as well. If we came to fill in the blank, service provider, hey, I would take your case, but for reasons A, B, and C, I can't do it to the ability I'd like. So I'm going to have to pass. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And I think we appreciate that.
Yeah, and then I did a post on LinkedIn where I'm like, if you're an immigration lawyer and you specialize in a particular area, listed here and where you are, what languages, so we can just send people your way because it just sometimes is better for someone else. One anecdote, a couple years back, I had this couple that came to me and I didn't buy that it was a real marriage, so I'm like, I can't do this. This seems fake. And they're like, okay, whatever. They left. Then a year later, I got this one marriage case. I'm like, how'd you learn about me? Like, well, my friend came to you and you said you wouldn't accept her case because it's marriage fraud, and she really liked that. So she when real case going for me, she recommended she come to me because you're honest with them. I'm like, wow, they weren't angry at me; they're appreciative of that fact. So it was really interesting.
Well, and I think that is, guys like you, Joseph, myself, other people in our kind of community, the Southern California community, people that we see often, you realize the people that are really about the work and really about helping people, it shows in other ways. And that idea of every conversation you have could be the beginning of 100 case referrals over your
Yeah.
career. And you really don't know. And so if you have this bird's eye view or this kind of long-term approach, I think, like you just said, like that, and that anecdote will continue to happen because the way you make people feel and the way you treat people. And it is interesting because things will come my way, 1,000 different avenues, and it oftentimes there'll be some origin story of, oh, you couldn't help somebody or you help somebody for something very small, right? Because a lot of times I'm helping
Hmm.
people fix these nuanced issues, and then because you said you did what you said you were going to do and it got done, it's like that's what I wanted. And so it's for our colleagues, friends, people that are in our world thinking, oh, how do I separate myself? I think it's ultimately you got to do the work, you got to make people feel like you're making their life easier, not harder. And it's almost, I think, as attorneys, A type, control freak, OCDs, checklist people, I think sometimes we forget life's not that complicated, and this work isn't that complicated. As far as it's a problem, people come to us to fix it, and then it's done,
Yeah.
right? I think sometimes we overcomplicate things because We're lawyers. That's what we're anxious about things that haven't happened yet and probably will never happen, right?
Yeah, that's our job. Now, speaking of things that haven't happened yet, what is your game plan for 2025? Any particular aspects of your business, your company that you're focused on developing?
So I think now it's really just about bracing for all the unknowns, processing times across the board. Anybody that asks, how long is it going to take? What do you
Yeah,
think?
that question.
It's kind of like, yeah, well, right now it's X. Currently, we're in a transition where maybe that's going to be X plus. If we go back to the first time this administration was in power, it was Y, right? And so I think it's going to be, back to, oh, did you put NA in every box?
Yeah,
Okay, case was rejected, right? That was a headache. Oh, if everything's going to be interviewed now, so now everything's going to take longer. Okay, well, those work and travel permits, let's make sure for family-based adjustment cases, let's say, let's make sure those are definitely, we keep those renewed up. I think it's really, I mean, you're probably the same way, John. Just because things were good for the last couple of years, in that things were processed quicker, doesn't mean we ever forgot what
yeah,
it was like when it was bad. And we still have a handful of black hole cases that on the surface had no issues. And we were saying 3 to 6 months because that's what the processing times were kind of looking like on
yeah,
average. We were still telling people in consults and once we
yeah,
filed, this could take a year, this could
yeah,
take 2 years, and there's nothing
exactly.
you did wrong, there's nothing we did wrong, but this is just welcome to immigration in
Hmm.
2024. So I think it'll be more of the same, that we're expecting the worst. So I'm still going to assume and prepare for it, but who knows, maybe cases, however they prioritize it, won't be, will continue to be streamlined in some ways. Because one thing, and I don't know, I'd be interested in your opinion about it. One thing we didn't have in the last time this administration was in power was all of the advances during COVID that we had.
Yeah,
In that, the virtual space, the work from home, the connectivity that USCIS really had to evolve with overnight, essentially. They're not going back to everybody in the office. They're not going
yeah,
back to everything hard filed. So I think there could be something to be said that COVID really put us in a more 21st century within the immigration space that will be leaned on even more with the kind of Trump 2.0. And I don't know if you're thought or thinking the same things as far as the advance in technology since pandemic.
yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's happened. So, I mean, a lot of people who didn't practice during Trump's time are going to be in for a shock. So I think we're kind of, I'm not sure how ready you could be, but at least mentally, I'm like, okay, I know that I've been through this rodeo before. But the USCI has been sending a lot of emails about the I-485 online engagement session. So if that happens, I was really against the online system because it was annoying, but I've finally gotten into it for I-130s and 400s and stuff. And honestly, it saves so much on postage, printing, because we would print stuff and redo it and fix it. That was taking hours. This is so much easier to do. It saves so much time. And that's the postage money itself. It saves a lot of money because we wouldn't charge the clients for it, even though our contract said it. So it's like probably $1,000 a year on just postage. We're not used to spending. Um, and so yeah, it's just kind of buckle up and get ready for the ride. Now, you're a well-known USCIS interview attorney. You go to interviews now. 4 years, they've been waiving a lot of those. Are you going to get back in the saddle and travel across the country to go to interviews? Or are you getting ready for that?
So best believe I was still going to interviews. Just because we saw less, they were still
Yeah,
happening. And so they never went away from Nats interviews, from naturalization. So I was still in these offices. Less travel around the country for these things. So to your point, I'll probably go back to that world just because, as you know, and as anybody that's lucky enough to watch this conversation, you could be right on the law, but if you have a bad interview, if you have an officer who's
yeah,
new or in a bad mood or just broke up with their wife and is taking out on your clients, that interview is, it could be a miracle. And so I've in the last 4 years, I've been going to interviews, and the same kind of world applies where just being able to speak officer as well as speak client and kind of meld those two
yeah,
languages together so that it's, hey, I'm not here to do your job, I'm simply here to make it so you have less work. So
yeah.
because I don't want there to be any miscommunication, or to your client who's hyperventilating and forgetting things, and all of a sudden some important detail about arrest 20 years ago, they don't know how to explain it. You being there and kind of being that, that
The
I
translator,
heard a
maybe.
colleague say years ago that,
Huh.
yeah, a colleague said once, we are Sherpas up the mountain of immigration. They have to do the walking. We're just holding their stuff, guiding them along the way. And so, yeah, I mean, if we go back to seeing guys like you, John, in the federal building, because it's been years since you've been down there, because now everybody's seeing interviews. I mean, this is, again, I think for those of us that have been practicing long enough, when things get good, we don't remember the bad times, and we continue to practice as if the bad times could come back. Because when,
Yeah.
i.e., said bad times come back, we're ready. In the same way, I don't think we're going to abandon efficiency and hopefulness, because I think what you and I have seen in the last 10, 15 years is immigration is here to stay as a political kind of just platform. And so our clients and our way of work and our careers are just going to be kind of ping pong between efficiency and non-efficiency, between, nobody can talk to immigration attorneys anymore, to, hey, let's collaborate and coordinate so that, these backlogs can get taken care of. So, I'm ready for the new normal, because realistically, John, it'll be the old normal. And I think as far as being a practitioner, talk to people that have been doing this 30, 40 years. They'll tell you, oh yeah, I remember the 80s. Oh yeah, I remember when Ira came out. Oh yeah. And we are
Yeah.
just in the midst of that same type of progression and evolution. One thing I'll say to your point about online filing, with the parole in place window we had for at least a little bit, it dawned on me that as we continue to go online, I could see this being, if we do have comprehensive immigration reform in our lifetime, right? Because we have another 30 years, right?
Yeah. God willing.
If they built the infrastructure for the online world, like the PIP cases were relatively easy to file, I could see this all being a precursor to moving to the 245I date up 20 years or whatever they're going to do. And then all of a sudden, we have the next X amount of years where we're busy, because, that would be hundreds of thousands of people, if not more, potentially millions, that can now benefit that online system and that apparatus, which I too was hesitant to get involved in because it was so annoying, and you can't get a G28 and now your client's stuck. Whereas if you just paper file, we're now in the same kind of space where, depending on the client, we're doing more online filing, and depending on what USCIS wants to do with the new admin, it's here to stay. And so it sounds like you and I are in the same boat, where reluctantly we're going this way, and maybe in 10 years we'll look back and say, oh, I'm glad we made the switch when we did.
Yeah, it's just the ink alone. I was going to say the extra cost of ink and having to print so much. But you mentioned 245i. That probably is going to be a major part of the solution, updating the 245i date. And that's going to get us really busy when that happens.
Well, I mean, look at PIP, right? I mean, yes, the courts get involved because, again, it's politics, but we were helping a selective population who'd been here a long time with no criminal issues, that have U.S. citizen family members. They're propping up the economy the way they work and pay taxes, regardless if they have work authorization. And so there's, it's an interesting time, because, kind of to your point about kind of Trump, rightly, wrongly, it's bringing more kind of people into our world. The thing about immigration being spotlighted for so long is, once we get through the rhetoric, people are going to have to talk about, country caps. People are going to have to talk about, wait, so you're an Indian national who's one of the smartest people in the world, working for one of the biggest tech companies in the world, and your green card's going to take 20 years? Wait, why? Right? That's going to force, ideally, people to have conversations about kind of the system we have, as opposed to 10 and 15 years ago, when people would just be like, oh yeah, we should do something about immigration, but nobody cared because it's complicated. Mm-hmm. Now the complications, because there's so much seemingly assault on, lawful immigration, let alone, people seeking refuge and seeking protection. Hopefully the spotlight ends up being good, in the same way when you're, trying to work on your house and you're like, oh yeah, we'll get to it, but we got to deal with the roof first. Well, once you get the roofers over and they realize, oh yeah, you have to get a whole new roof, then you can put the solar panels, and then you can get yeah, it's a headache and it's a nightmare, but at least you're starting at the core root of the problem. Maybe we'll see in the future that all of this animus and negativity spotlighting all of the issues, we'll actually realize, as a country, we're not having kids anymore. As a world, the smartest and the brightest are still coming here. If we want to continue to maintain our advantage in the world economically,
Yeah.
geopolitically, we're going to need these people. And shocker, they're some of the best people we have. Why not make their lives a little bit easier? So,
Yeah, make a
I'm an
system to get them
optimist
in
though,
the
John.
right way. Yeah, if there's the right way to do it, let's make a system for that to happen. So if everyone's happy and it benefits both everybody. Well, thanks, Nicholas, for coming to come on the show again. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way they can do that?
Great question. So, Nicholas Mireles, you see my name. Like John, I'm kind of on all the platforms, although I'm not as popular as John. But absolutely, I've talked to many people who kind of subscribe to the John universe, and they've come and talked to me at different conferences and things like that. So, we do this not because we make a bunch of money doing it. We do it because it matters to us, building that network, building that community. And I think, whether it's Googling me or finding me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, emailing, etc., we do this for a reason. And that's really because John and I remember what it was like when we were starting out with a lot of hope and ambition. And also, immigration attorneys are a very unique group. We are both some of the hardest working people that do it for very little. And on the flip side, we're interesting. And most attorneys, as you know, John, are kind of boring. So fine, link up with me however you can. Look forward to hearing from you, John. As always, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show again. Good talking with you. We'll catch up. Set up a time, my email for us to talk again soon.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, bro. See you soon. Well, that was a fun conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Nicholas Mireles is a great immigration lawyer. He travels the country. I mean, speaking of people who go to conferences a lot, that's one guy that does it. He also does appearances for people for adjustment of status. He's a talker. If you haven't known, if you ever had a conversation with Nicholas anywhere and you met him, he'll start talking with you. And he does the same when I go to USC. I just stuff CBP stuff with them. And it really gets people to know him and have deeper relationships with him. So it's really helpful. If you can't do it like an adjustment interview, or you want someone to go to CBP secondary, that's the guy to send, because whatever wall he's hitting there, he'll talk through that wall until it breaks down and it opens people's hearts. So that's a good resource to have with Nicholas. If going back to what I talked about in the intro, if you're interested about the E2 training session, case study is the proper way to do it. Just email me, info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. I have a link for scheduling it, and if this one fills up, I'll send you a link for registering on a wait list for the next ones that come up, and I'll announce it on my newsletter too when we do other things like NIWs, EB1As. Just so much redactions you have to do for those. It's like a real pain, but it's worth doing and worth learning. I mean, it's a huge business area. It's booming, and if Elon Musk takes a hold of the immigration department, you're going to see some different changes happening to the positive with those. So you want to see it. If Stephen Miller doesn't take over, it's going to be a fight between those two, I think. But I mean, he doesn't have a legitimate position. Elon Musk is more like this advisor. So I don't really know. It's politics nonsense, but wishful thinking probably. But having said all that, immigration lawyer John Khosravi, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you all next episode. Bye-bye.